Welcome to the Space in Between podcast, a series where we will talk about everything and anything mental performance in a bite-sized fashion.
My name is Sienna and I'm here with Frida. We are both certified mental performance consultants from Ireland and from Sweden. I'm from Ireland, Frida's from Sweden.
Woo!
On this podcast, we share our knowledge and passion for all things sport and performance psychology. This includes all things mindset, exercise, sport, everyday life, and insights into how we help ourselves and many, many other people in developing their mindset.
Fire.
What are we talking about today, Frida?
We're going to talk about 5 things we don't want you to worry about. So the 5 things that we're going to talk about is being nervous, making mistakes, feeling motivated, being positive, and winning.
All right. Let's take it from the top.
Let's take it from the top. That's it. So why should we not worry about being nervous?
Well, one of the main reasons that we should not worry about being nervous is that it's completely normal to feel nervous. Like, it is a natural human instinct that often happens when we are about to do something that we care about, that's important to us. And oftentimes we get nervous when we are uncertain of the outcome, which is, if you think about sports, we can never be certain about the outcome. So we shouldn't worry about it because it's probably going to happen. And by worrying about it less, we can perform with those nerves.
Yeah, so I guess what we mean then, kind of what you're saying there with not worrying about nerves, is that it's a part of your performance, and feeling nerves, it's not necessarily a bad thing.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes we might have that perception that I definitely did when I was younger. Oh my God, why am I so nervous? If I'm nervous, that means I'm not going to be able to perform well. It looks like all of these other players are not nervous. You know, like I remember being a kid seeing videos of pro athletes and they're sitting there with their headphones. They look so locked in and it looks like they have everything under control, but they probably felt a lot of nerves too, but you don't see that, right?
Yeah.
So that's why we don't need to worry, because they're a part of anything that you do, and especially, like you said, when it's something we care about, which a lot of the time comes down to our performances.
Yeah. And like, the more we worry about nerves, the more they will impact us. So the more we think, oh, it's not good if I feel nervous, or I can't play well when I feel nervous, then when we do feel nervous, because we probably will, then it's going to impact us. Compared to someone who's going in not worried about nerves, who accepts that they probably will feel nervous, then they can perform and not have that stress of being nervous about being nervous.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, that's the main difference here, isn't it? That, like the way we see it.
Mm-hmm.
So for someone that knows that, okay, nerves, they are normal, they're a part of it. It's okay that I feel nervous. I can play well anyway. They're probably going to handle that situation a lot better compared to someone that thinks, oh God, no, this is awful and my performance is going to go down the drain, type of thing. And I suppose that kind of makes me think a little bit about your recent World Championship
Thank you for mentioning
tournament.
that.
Yeah, of course. This is going to be every day, every podcast now for 3 years, everybody. No, I'm joking. But we talked about that in that podcast, how you did feel nervous, right? But that didn't mean that, you know, you weren't going to be able to perform well.
Yeah. No, it didn't.
So yeah, that's important. And I suppose with nerves too, obviously there are levels of how nervous we might feel or how it might impact our body. So physiologically, sweaty palms, butterflies in your stomach, heart is racing, those type of things, right? But even with that, we can use strategies to lower those things as well, to feel more in control of those nerves. So I suppose that's also important, that sometimes our nerves could be impacting us to a degree that is unhelpful. So then it's about, okay, well, how can I regulate that to bring it back to a level where this allows me to perform at a high standard still.
Yeah. And that can help you worry less about nerves by knowing that you have the tools to handle them.
Exactly. And I suppose quickly mentioning 2 tools maybe that we could use, one of them being the breath. So we can always fall back on the breath. It's one of the best tools. One, for grounding, but then also for calming down that nervous system. If we feel nervous, heart is racing, if we feel like, you know, our palms are sweaty and cold, I get that all the time. Using deep breathing and focusing on that breath, counting the breath to calm everything down.
And then the second thing that we could implement there is a very different strategy. So you're focusing on the physiological impact, but then obviously you mentioned there's a psychological impact. So often with nerves come thoughts like, it's not good to be nervous, but we can reframe our nerves into by reminding ourselves of reasons that we actually want to be in the situation we're in. So for example, before you play a big game, whatever that is, well, you probably trained to actually be in this situation. So reminding yourself, you know, this is exactly where I want to be, and I'm actually excited to perform. And I can feel nervous and also be excited at the same time, because those two things are very similar in terms of the body's response.
Yeah, absolutely. And to bring it back to your world's win again, how many times can we do that in one podcast? I think about a very powerful way to do that with the thoughts, especially. So you have your breath, it's always with you, right? Because we're breathing. With the thoughts, if you have a notebook or your phone, write down those thoughts that you have and then answer them. So reframe them. Okay, well, we gave an example when you did that to your thoughts in your journal, right? And one of the things that you mentioned was that, you know, this is what I've trained for. Like, this is exactly where I want to be, that type of thing. So writing it down on paper can also be very helpful.
Yeah. All right, we're going to move on
to number 2. Yeah.
The second thing that you should not spend too much time worrying about, and that is making mistakes. Frida, why should we not worry about making mistakes?
Well, you know, it's the same thing as with nerves. Mistakes will happen. If there's one thing that's for sure in sports and anything else really in life, is that we will make mistakes. So it's not about never making a mistake. It's about how will I respond when I make a mistake, right? Because if we think about it, think about mistake as building a brick tower. If I make a mistake and I put a brick on the ground, right? And then I make another mistake, another brick, so now there's 2 bricks, and let's say I make 5 more. All of a sudden we have 8 bricks. 7 bricks. Wow, maths. So eventually that brick tower is going to fall, and it's going to make a big impact because you have just made 7, 8, 9, 10 mistakes in a row, unable to respond to them, right? So that makes a big impact compared to if I make one mistake, I respond to that mistake, so that brick goes away. Okay, good. And then another mistake happens. There's another brick on the ground. I move that brick out of the way. So we're not building that big tower, but we're able to respond to each mistake as they happen. Yeah, so like realizing that mistake, they are a part of the game and they will happen. And that doesn't mean that the rest of the game is ruined. We can always come back. So what are we going to focus on next, for example? If I do make a mistake in a game, what is helpful to focus on next?
So what you're saying is we should spend less time thinking about not making mistakes and plan how we will respond if and when we make a mistake.
Exactly.
So it has less of an impact on our performance.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, I think that's what's the important part, isn't it? Yeah. So there are many different ways that we can respond to mistakes. A very simple one is to think, okay, what's the next thing that I can do? What's the next action to focus on? We can also tie that with a routine that we have when a mistake happens, right? So let's say you play soccer and you make a mistake. Maybe you wipe your shoulder as a way to reset. And then after that, okay, I'm going to focus on getting back into my position, etc. So tying a physical cue with a reminder of your next step can be a powerful way to respond to mistakes.
Yeah, and I'm thinking, based on what you're saying, like going into a performance with the mindset, well, it doesn't matter if I make a mistake because I'm just going to reset and be able to continue to perform, even if there are some mistakes in my performance.
Yeah, exactly. And once again, bring it back to the podcast that we talked about your world win. That's the 3rd time now.
You're the one who's bringing it up.
I know, but there was a lot of good examples in there. So if you haven't listened to that yet, I highly recommend. But I think about, what you said about going into the tiebreaker and how you had been up 12-6 and then she came back 14-12 and then 14-14. You missed a match point and you missed another match point. I'm not going to rub it in too much. You did come out victorious. But something that you said was that, well, what's the point of hanging on to those misses or, being frustrated that I didn't get that last point that I really wanted or I missed my kill shot, etc. And now I'm going into the tiebreaker. If you had kept thinking about those things, that's when it would have impacted your performance compared to, all right, we're back in, it's 0-0, next ball, etc.
Yeah.
So that's a really good example of how you can see that, mistakes are not the issue, it's how we respond to mistakes.
Yeah, so don't worry about mistakes. Worry about how you'll respond to mistakes.
Yeah, pretty much. Moving on to number 3, feeling motivated. Why should we not worry about feeling motivated?
We should not worry about feeling motivated because we're not always going to feel motivated. And motivation is a feeling. So we can do things even if we don't feel motivated. And motivation like comes and goes in cycles. You know, you might be highly motivated after you just set a new exciting goal. And then 6 months into your training plan and you're still 3 months out from achieving that goal, you might hit a lull in motivation.
Yeah.
But if we can focus on discipline and commitment rather than motivation, then we'll be able to take the action that we intended to take anyways. So, you know, sometimes people like hold themselves back by saying like, oh, I just don't feel motivated, so I'll get started next week or next month or whatever it is. And taking actions can help us maybe not build motivation, but by taking one action one day at a time, then over time, that will just become habits. And with that commitment, you know, we don't have to rely on motivation to take us to where we want to go because we're not always going to feel motivated.
Yeah, absolutely. And just what you said there about, you know, taking consistent actions over time, those are the things that actually create change. It's not about making these big, grand things every other week, whatever that might be, I don't know. It's about the daily intentions that you set and you take. So thinking about the small steps that we can take every single day.
Yeah, absolutely. And sometimes I think like we get stuck up on not feeling motivated. Like this is such a not silly example, but like a personal example completely unrelated to sport. Like I have been studying Swedish, but for the last like couple of months, I would say, I just haven't felt very motivated to like actually take intentional time out of my day to study. Sorry, Frida. Despite not having motivation, I feel disappointed in myself that I haven't taken that time. So even if I say I haven't been motivated, there is motivation there because why else would I care that I haven't done it?
Sure.
So like sometimes we might not feel motivated, but there's still a goal, you know? So even by reminding ourselves of, well, why did I start this journey? You know, because I mightn't feel motivated right now, but there was a time when I set out on this journey. So that can help us take those actions.
So a way to help with the motivation then, like you were saying, is to remember why.
Yeah.
What's the reason you started this?
Yeah, because
Just
that
like you
runs
said
a
there.
lot deeper and will probably sustain for a longer period of time than feeling motivated.
Yeah, absolutely. It brings me back to when I was training for my triathlon earlier this year, and that was a long time block, you know, that you were putting time into getting ready for that. And there were definitely days where I was like, oh, why? I don't want to go to the swimming pool, you know? And with the why, it wasn't just, oh, it's because I'm doing this triathlon. It's also because, well, I want to be able to swim those 850 meters because that will make me feel proud of myself that I did that.
Yeah.
You know, so that's also deeper than just, oh, I just want to do a triathlon.
Yeah. So I guess that's naturally brought us to what to do if you're struggling with that one. So like if you are worried or if you are like, oh, I just don't feel motivated or I haven't for a while, like, you know, take it one step further and ask yourself like, well, why do I want to take action? Like, why do I want to achieve whatever it is that I've set out to achieve? And that will help you over the long journey that is making progress towards anything.
And with that, last thing we'll say about this, so with asking that why, so let's say my goal is to get fit. Obviously that goal is very broad now. What does that even mean? But just bear with me. So let's say I write down in my notebook, I want to be fit. Why? Why do you want to be fit? So that I can run a 10K. Why do you want to run a 10K? And you know, like you can keep going and going and going and keep digging and digging and digging, right?
Yeah.
So don't just start with the first one. Keep asking yourself, well, why? Why is that? You know, what's pushing you to do this? So I guess that's why we don't want to worry about motivation, because we can still be disciplined and committed and remind ourselves of why we're doing something if we feel like we're not that motivated right now. And the fourth thing that we don't have to worry about is being positive. So why do we not have to worry about that?
I love talking about this one. So This is an interesting one because, like, oftentimes you'll hear people say, "Oh, just be positive about it," or like, "Don't worry about it," or something like that. But positivity isn't always a positive thing, if you will, forgive the pun. It's okay to experience a wide range of emotions, and if we're talking about performing, you're going to feel so many emotions. You're not going to feel positive all the time. You might feel moments of positivity, maybe not even. Maybe you just feel focused. Maybe you feel energized. Maybe you feel confident, Like, you don't have to feel positive at all. Like, there's so many different emotions that we can experience. And, like, I think that's just a word that's thrown around to nearly, like, believe in yourself or something like that. But yeah, we shouldn't necessarily worry about feeling positive because we can still perform really well and achieve things if we're not positive all the time.
Yeah, so it kind of sounds like what you're saying is that sometimes people are just like, just be positive.
Yeah.
Or just have those positive thoughts.
Yeah.
It's okay, But sometimes it's okay to not feel that.
And I would nearly go as far to say sometimes when you're trying to perform, like, being positive isn't necessarily helpful at all. Like, if I'm feeling really nervous before, that's a common time that you hear, "Oh, just be positive," Like, you maybe tell someone, "I'm feeling really nervous about this. Like, I'm about to go and do this thing I really care about, like play handball, for example." And you say, "Just be positive, Sienna." So me telling myself, "Oh, everything is going to go great. Everything is going to be perfect." That's not as helpful to me as me saying, "Okay, here are the things I'm going to do to warm up. Here are the things I'm going to do to perform well. Here are the things that I'm going to say to myself if I make a mistake." So, like, you telling me to be positive hasn't helped me at all in that situation.
Yeah. And I suppose sometimes when people might say that, "Oh, just be positive," or whatever, it kind of erases maybe other things that you're feeling.
Yeah.
Because we can be, for a lack of a better word now, positive and nervous. Like, all of those things, like, feelings can be working together. They can happen at the same time.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be one or another.
Yeah, that's like a lot of the time when we talk to people, we don't even talk about being positive or being negative.
No.
We talk about, like, what's going to be helpful or what's unhelpful. And that's because those, like, positivity or something that's positive or negative might be different to everyone,
Absolutely.
So that's why it's important to understand what those things are for yourself.
So I guess the last thing we might want to mention with this, to wrap it up with the being positive part, is that, kind of like with being nervous, you can have unhelpful thoughts. You can have negative thoughts before a performance, during a performance. Like, all of those things can happen because thoughts are automatic. We don't necessarily control them, right? But we can still perform well, with all of those emotions and all of those thoughts. Because once again, it comes back to, how do we respond to these things? And what tools do we have in our back pocket that we can use when those things pop up?
Yeah. And I was just thinking, as you were talking about the negative thoughts or unhelpful thoughts, sometimes by even saying to ourselves, "Oh, I just need to be positive," you can even highlight if you're struggling with that. So if you are having thoughts like, "Oh, what if this doesn't go well?" By just telling yourself, "Oh, I just need to be positive," you're highlighting that all of my thoughts aren't positive right now. Whereas if you were to say, "It's okay to have doubts, I still believe I can do well," you allow room for both of those things, like the positivity, the self-belief, and the doubts at the same time. So then you don't get worried about your thoughts, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I guess it all comes down to acceptance in a way.
Always.
Doesn't it? That we can have these things exist at the same time, and that's okay.
That was nicely put.
Thank you. With that said, we're going to move on to the last one. So for the fifth thing that we don't need to worry about, we're going to talk about winning. Always a good topic. This is a lot of the time something that can divide a room when we do the circle of control.
Yeah.
Can we control or not control winning? It's always a good conversation.
Yeah, and that's why we don't want to worry about it, because we cannot control winning.
Exactly. And some of you right now might think, what are you talking about? Of course I can control winning. Let us tell you why. You can't.
Yeah. Well, firstly, there are so many factors, variables that influence winning. Like a simple way to think about it is like I could perform the best I've ever performed and I could lose.
Yeah.
You know, obviously you increase your chances of getting that outcome when you perform well, but it's never guaranteed. You know, same thing. You could actually perform poorly and somehow win.
Yeah.
So just with that one variable, like it's not inside our control. You know, there are things we can do to influence it, but at the end of the day, we're not going to have 100% control over winning or losing.
Yeah, that's it. And, you know, one of the things we can think about here is, okay, well, why can't you control the outcome of the game, even if I perform at the best of my ability? It's because a lot of the time there will be someone else there or other people, depending on what sport you're playing.
Yeah.
So you might have teammates, you have opponents. There might just be one opponent, might be many opponents. And they also have an impact on what the outcome is going to be, and you can't control that. So for you playing handball, you could play the best game of your life, but your opponent could be playing better on that day.
Yeah, absolutely. Unlikely, but no, I don't.
Dang right.
And if we come back to like the reason why we shouldn't worry about winning, obviously because we can't control it, but also because spending a lot of time, we're saying worrying, but even just thinking or dwelling about winning, that can have a really negative impact on you and your performance. Because sometimes with focusing on winning, you know, we might forget to focus on the things that will help us perform. Like what are the actions that help us perform? And focusing on something outside our control, that can increase stress and anxiety associated with what we're about to do. And it can cause more self-doubt because we don't have control over it. So by purely focusing on that and wanting that to happen, then we might have more self-doubt like, you know, am I going to win? Well, we can't actually answer that question like fully knowing the answer.
Yeah. Yeah, and that goes back to what we talked about in the beginning, nerves, for example, right? So when we are focused on winning, we're focused on the outcome. The outcome's in the future. We don't know what's going to happen. We don't have control over it. So we have all these what if thoughts. Well, what if this happens? What if I make a mistake and then I can't come back and then we lose, et cetera, right? So like you said, that's why we don't necessarily want to focus on winning per se, but we want to focus on our performance and the things that we can do to perform well.
Yeah.
And usually those things go hand in hand, and most of the time when we perform well, we probably will have an outcome that is favorable to us, right? And with all of this said, you know, this doesn't mean that Sienna doesn't care about winning. You know, when she's playing handball, she has said many times that every time she steps into the court, she believes that she can win and she wants to win, right?
I mean, we all want to win.
Yeah, like we all want to win. Come on.
Why else would we do it?
Yeah, no. But with that said, just because she has that belief, I'm speaking for you now, so if you're going to interject, please do. That doesn't mean that that's the only thing she's thinking about. Like Sienna's thinking about, well, what can I do to perform?
Yeah. And like we often say, focus on the process and the outcome will take care of itself.
There it is.
I know. Focus on those steps you're going to take. Because you might be like, what is the process? Well, the process is the actions you're going to take. Like in any performance, there's probably thousands of actions you take to perform well.
Yeah.
And that can be overwhelming to think about. But like you can think about what are the fundamental things that help me perform well. So like for me, I think about like playing offensively, moving my feet, following through on my serves, anticipating the return. Like simple things like that that you have to do in your sport to perform well.
Yeah.
The more time you spend focusing on those things, not necessarily worrying about them, but just thinking about them, the more chance that the outcome will go in your favor.
Absolutely. And you know, something that stands out with a lot of top performers is that they do the basics incredibly well. And they're focusing on those next steps.
Yeah.
What they can do. Okay, what's important right now? And they focus on that more so than in 15 minutes who's going to be the winner.
Yeah.
So I suppose with all the things that we have talked about, you see a red line through all of them. They're all connected to a degree or another, right? So hopefully by us talking through these 5 things that you don't have to worry about, it can bring some calmness to you.
Yeah, and you can stop worrying about them, guys.
Exactly. Just stop worrying about it. Be positive. Just stop worrying about it. No, just joking. But yeah, hopefully you got something helpful from this podcast. And as always, remember to use the space in between.
Beautiful.
Thanks.
We'll see you in the next one.
See you in the next one, mates.